Welcome to the English Talk Show. This episode is designed to help you learn English through listening. You do not need to repeat. You do not need to translate. Just listen, relax your mind, relax your body, and let the English language flow naturally. This is not a test, it is a journey. Now, let us begin. A new beginning always feels uncomfortable. It feels unfamiliar and uncertain, but it is often necessary. There was a person who felt stuck in life. Every day felt the same routine, the same thoughts, the same worries. This person knew that something had to change. Not everything, just one thing. So they made a small decision. They decided to start learning English, not perfectly and not quickly, but consistently. Every morning, they woke up early before the noise of the day, before the responsibilities, before the distractions. The world was quiet, the air was fresh, and the moment felt peaceful. They listened to English. At first, the words felt fast, the sentences felt long, and the meaning felt unclear. But they continued listening. They did not stop. Some days were easy, and some days were difficult. Some days felt motivating, and some days felt frustrating. But every day, they listened. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, sometimes more and sometimes less, but never zero. At the beginning, understanding everything was impossible, and that was okay. They learned that understanding comes slowly, like sunrise, like growth, like confidence. They realized that their ears were learning before their mouth. They realized that repetition was not boring, it was powerful. Listening again made the sounds familiar. Familiar sounds became familiar words, and familiar words became understanding. They stopped being afraid of not understanding everything and focused only on listening. Listening while walking, listening while resting, listening while drinking coffee. English became part of their daily life, not a subject and not a burden, but a habit. A new beginning always feels uncomfortable. There was a person who wanted to change their life. They decided to learn English, not fast and not perfectly, but every day. They listened to English every morning. At first it was difficult, but they continued, day by day and step by step. Learning English takes time. Learning English requires patience. Listening every day improves understanding. You do not need to understand everything. Your ears learn before your mouth. Consistency is more important than speed. Think about this. Do you listen to English every day? Do you feel more comfortable than before? Do you allow yourself to learn slowly? You are not late. You are not slow. You are learning, and learning takes time. 10 minutes a day is powerful. Listening today is better than listening tomorrow. Your brain is working even when you are not aware. Trust the process, trust repetition, and trust yourself. The person did not become fluent overnight, but something changed. They felt more confident, they understood more sounds, and they recognized more words. English stopped feeling scary, and that was the real beginning. This was episode 1 of Learn English Through Listening. Listen to this episode again tomorrow or later today. Your ears are learning and your confidence is growing. It's improvements. English words started to sound less strange. The rhythm of the language felt more familiar. Some sentences began to make sense without effort. Understanding arrived naturally, without pressure. There were moments of doubt. Moments when the person wondered if listening was enough. Moments when progress felt invisible. But they kept going. They understood that progress is not always loud. Sometimes it is silent. Sometimes it hides inside patience. They learned to enjoy not understanding everything. They learned to listen without stress. They learned that the brain needs time to connect sounds, meanings, and emotions. Each listening session became a moment of calm, not a task, not an obligation, but a pause from the world. Slowly, English became a background sound of life. It played during walks, during quiet evenings, during moments of rest. The language stopped feeling foreign. It began to feel familiar, like a voice you recognize. Even if you do not understand every word, the person noticed something important. They were no longer translating in their head. They were no longer fighting the language. They were simply listening. And listening was enough. Confidence grew quietly. Not confidence to speak perfectly, but confidence to continue. Confidence to trust the process. Confidence to allow mistakes, confusion, and silence. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And without realizing it, the person understood more than before. Not because they tried harder, but because they stayed consistent. They understood that learning a language is not about speed. It is about presence. It is about showing up every day, even when motivation is low. Especially when motivation is low. English was no longer a fear. It was no longer a challenge to defeat. It became a companion on the journey. A gentle voice that reminded them that change is possible, even through small steps. And in that quiet routine of listening, the person discovered something deeper. They were not only learning English. They were learning patience. They were learning discipline. They were learning to trust themselves. The journey continued. No pressure. No deadlines. Just listening. Just growing. One calm moment at a time. A new beginning always feels uncomfortable, even when it is something small. Change does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes quietly, almost unnoticed. There was a person who understood this slowly. They did not wake up one day feeling motivated or confident. They simply reached a point where staying the same felt heavier than trying something new. This person felt tired of repeating the same days. Every morning looked the same. Every thought followed the same path, and every worry returned again and again. They were not unhappy in a dramatic way, but they were not growing either. Deep inside, they knew that life needed movement, even if that movement was slow. They did not look for a perfect plan. They did not wait for the right moment. They chose something simple. They chose to learn English. Not because they wanted perfection, and not because they expected fast results, but because they wanted change to begin somewhere at first. Learning English felt confusing. The sounds were unfamiliar, the rhythm felt strange, and the sentences seemed longer than necessary. Understanding did not come easily. Sometimes it did not come at all. But instead of stopping, they continued listening. They allowed confusion to exist without fighting it. Each morning they listened before the day became loud, before responsibilities demanded attention, before the world moved too fast. These quiet moments became important. They were not dramatic moments, but they were honest ones. Just a person, a voice, and time. Some days felt encouraging. On those days, a word sounded familiar, or a sentence made sense without effort. Other days felt empty. Nothing stayed in memory, and progress felt invisible. But they learned not to judge these days. They learned that learning is not a straight line. Slowly, something changed. English stopped feeling like a challenge and started feeling like a presence. It was there while they walked, while they rested, while they drank coffee. The language became part of the background of life. Not something to control, but something to experience. They noticed that their mind was becoming calmer. They were no longer translating every word. They were no longer chasing meaning. They were simply listening. And listening was enough. The brain was doing its work quietly, connecting sounds and patterns without asking for attention. Understanding began to grow naturally. Not suddenly, and not perfectly, but steadily. Words became familiar. Familiar words became meaningful. Meaning arrived without pressure. The fear of not understanding everything slowly disappeared. The person realized that Learning English was teaching them something deeper. It was teaching patience. It was teaching consistency. It was teaching trust. Trust in time. Trust in repetition. Trust in themselves. They understood that fluency was not a destination to reach quickly. It was a result of staying present, of showing up every day, even when motivation was low. Especially when motivation was low, English was no longer something they needed to conquer. It became something they could walk alongside, a quiet companion on a longer journey. And with each day of listening, confidence grew. Thank you for listening to the English Talk Show. See you in the next episode.